But those things wouldn't be seen as unjust, right? They would be misfortunes, but not necessarily unjust. And of course, if some misfortune happens to someone who can't take care of it themselves, this list of essential goods and services would step in and help them with pay for the appendectomy, even if they didn't have the resources themselves. So my proposal then is that one of the ways of sorting out this huge debate between left and right, and I'll let you put yourself where you want to be on, and there really is no one single spectrum, but the huge debate is to say these are 4 issues that everybody has to address. Well, I guess you can ignore them, but in fact, everybody has a position on all 4 issues, even if they try to ignore 1 or 2 of them. And that would help our conversation about what's fair and not fair in economic life. So, to summarize, every economy has to solve 4 problems. Whether it solves them very well or not is another question, but allocation, getting things produced, distribution, who gets what, the problems of scale, when there's so much going on that it affects the common good, in a sense, the overall equilibrium, and the quality of human relations. And that anybody who wants to talk about how economy should be run needs to address all 4 of those problems, or they're leaving something important out. And secondly, the second set of proposals here, or the second framework, is that to understand, and I think to participate in the debate about what's fair and unfair in economic life, it helps to keep in mind that there are 4 separate issues that people disagree on, but there may be agreement on one and disagreement on the other, or any combination there. And if we keep that in mind as we get involved in those debates, I think we're better off, better able to understand the good things the other side is saying in the midst of getting our own view in there. And that if we have a little more of that in the country, we have a somewhat better conversation about the current economic crisis. So, this is not going to, there's one thing it didn't do here this morning, however, was to tell you what you should believe about these things. That would have to be another talk. Because I had my own list, of those 4 things. And largely, it's Catholic social thought is how I approach the world. But the appeal right now is that it's helpful to keep in mind what the issues are, separate from your answers to the issues, my answers to the issues. Because that allows us to have a conversation, even with people who disagree with us, if we can all agree, yeah, this is our disagreement. So, there are probably lots of questions. I guess you can't make any comments this morning, but I'm open to them, but I'll have to see if anyone wants to ask questions, and I'll have to give Dale the microphone back, and he'll take it to you. There's one back there.
Coach your comment in the form of a question. That's the idea.
This is only a clarification question. I'm trained to think of definitions as genus and species. Could you explain how a definition of markets happens by prohibitions?
Yeah. I guess I'm using the definition, the word definition, in a little bit of analogous way there. It's not defining a market and saying markets are institutions that do X, but rather defining them in the sense of saying how they're going to work. All right? And they're going to work this way. That there are certain things we're going to prohibit, and then beyond that, you're free to do what you want. Now, I think a Christian can even endorse that, because, of course, our view of law is that the law is only a minimum of morality. It's not the whole of morality. So we may allow certain things legally that we would never endorse morally and would never do ourselves. And of course, one of the problems we have in our culture is that so many people misunderstand the difference between law and morality. How many public officials have you seen defend their actions by saying, well, it was legal, as if somehow that lets them off the hook, as if that's what morality is, So there's a cultural problem there, but I think as Catholics, at least, that's a very well-known distinction.
I would add that Chesterton would talk about definitions, the idea of limits. I mean, a definition defines something, it puts the limits around it, and that would reinforce your use of it.
Just a nuts and bolts question. Could you summarize the 4 issues again? I got lost in the last 2.
Okay. The first one was the definition of markets, or what rules there will be for markets. The second was the provision of essential goods and services. The third was the morality of individuals and groups. We've all got some view of how that should go. And the fourth was civil society. These many myriad different organizations that people join.
I would like to say that was a fabulous talk, but we're not allowed to make comments, so I won't. I'd like to ask you, what group do you think we belong to? I mean, obviously we belong to families in which we have obligations and gifts. What group do we belong to where obligation and gift is a bigger part of who we are than just fair exchange? And is that important to define that when we discuss economy?
Well,
You can tell me if you're a nationalist too.
I'm not sure I understand, so you'll have to let me know if I have gotten it right. But the fundamental relationship in the economy is the exchange, right? The economic exchange, the one-to-one. My boss offers me a job, I say I'll do it. Target offers me to buy this coffee maker to replace the one that just broke in my house, and I buy it. That sort of a thing. And in the way it often happens in our economy, they tend to be pretty impersonal. And in fact, contracts by design are intended to be, they could be enforced by a third party, like a judge, who was never there in the first place and who may not know either one of us. You know, contract exchanges in the American view so often is impersonal and precise. I think two answers then. A lot of our organizations that we're involved in have a lot more to them, they're richer context than just what goes on in the market. Now, we can also care about people in markets, and we ought to. And the Pope has referred, is that this microphone, or what's going on here? Why that's popping, but the Pope referred to in his most recent encyclical, the Caritas in Veritate, holding up these combination organizations, economic firms that make a profit but dedicate their profit to some higher purpose. And he actually mentioned a few examples, like firms that put their profits in a foundation, like Bremer Bank does here in Minnesota. He mentioned the Economy of Communion movement, the part of the Focolare movement, where these firms have a different set of operating principles. They give a third of their profits to the poor and so forth. So there are possibilities of economic organizations that would be less impersonal than the typical presumption in the American economy. But I would think most of the civil society organizations that we join have a richer, more personalist side to them than the exchange by contract. I love to play bridge, and I get to play it maybe once a month in the St. Cloud Duplicate Bridge Club. And I pay a dues to the national office. I have no relationship with them, but I've become friends with the local group in St. Cloud, and it's partly a social event, right? So there's more going on in most of these civil society organizations than just the exchange of equivalents. So I don't know if any of that answers the question you asked, but that's what I heard.
It was a really strange question. I think you did a pretty good job with it there.
They like each other.
One organization that everyone should join is the American Chesterton Society. And we do have the membership forms right out there for anyone who has.
And it's not expensive.
It's not expensive.
It's very personal.
And it's personal. and I get some of the money, so it's all good.
Thank you. You said, I think, right at the end of your talk that you take